You know, it's interesting. There's a big difference between gardeners that do a lot of multitasking in their garden. Those are very successful gardeners. They usually have incredibly fertile soil. They have incredibly productive compost piles. They understand the microclimate inside their gardens. They know exactly where to grow certain plants. They always keep their soil covered with life. They are very effective using ground covers to their advantage. They collect green matter, they collect leaves, they have these systems where they're moving compost through the different processes. So these gardeners, they are very experienced in this idea of not just growing food. They have this idea of how do I keep my garden moving forward? How do I keep my garden generating incredible amounts of produce? Do I do crop rotation? Do I do companion planting? Do I understand what it really means to grow effectively? Do I do, all these things that are going to allow me to grow 5 years into the future? A gardener like that is should be every gardener's objective. This multitasking of having your irrigation set up properly, having these little stone walls that create these microclimates, having your soil always up to snuff. Your soil is always being supplemented with great compost. So they have a pipeline of innovation and services that are helping their garden stay on top of, being incredibly beautiful and strong. So those types of gardeners, the ones you want to emulate, you want to work like them. You want to say to yourself, I'm not just going to grow vegetables this year. I am going to grow vegetables at a different level, but I'm also going to condition my soil. I'm going to work forward in such a way that I have a 5-year plan in mind. I don't have this year in mind. I have this idea of I'm going to condition my soil in such a way that in 5 years, everything will grow even better. You have this forward movement that is unstoppable. These gardeners, they understand that it's not just enough to condition a little plot. They want to cover their entire lands. They're aggressive. They are creative. They are educated. They want to know how they can improve everything in their gardens. And those types of gardeners are always doing their homework. They always are willing to do that extra investment. They're willing to schlep, 60 bags of leaves to their compost pile. They do that little bit of extra, and that little bit of extra makes their gardens undescribable for the ordinary gardener. We don't understand how they can get to such a level of gardening. And I don't think they necessarily kill themselves for time. I think they're very structured in their thinking. They finish growing something and in August they'll put a cover crop down. They know the rhythm that gives them a better garden. If you can understand that rhythm of, using cover crops, adding compost to your garden at a certain time, growing certain crops in certain locations, all these things, this is all pure knowledge for them. They might have some animals in the background that they use to supply the manure. They might have different types of plants that they use. They might rotate their cover crops. They'll do all these creative things that they've learned over the years or they've researched. There's so much information out there now. It's always a matter of finding that information. So if you're going to plan out your garden, look, don't just say to yourself, I'm going to grow this little 10 by 10, grow vegetables in there. Maybe that's all the time you do have. But have a compost pile in the background. Figure out a better way to water your 10 by 10 plot. There's always ways to improve your garden that are not necessarily incredibly complicated or expensive. So use that to your advantage. Have this idea of, okay, I'm going to have less work. If I have less work because I'm more organized or I'm more structured, I can do 20 by 10 next year. So there's always this idea of filling in your entire garden with life, keeping the ground covered covered in such a way that the sun can't get at it. Dealing with the winter, if you have winter seasons, in such a way that you're protecting your asparagus or whatever it may be. So this idea of gardening to the next level is what I'm talking about. This idea of not just taking on one task. If you can take on 5 or 6 or 7 tasks and thinking that it's an investment into the future, then your gardens will be a lot better. If you can actually do a little bit of planning, how you're going to get to the 5-year mark, what your garden's going to look in 5 years, if you can do all that, it's going to be a very, very different garden that you have. And guess what? The plants will help you. Your best worker, your best employee are all your plants. If you can keep the ground cover, if you can keep the soil working, the micronutrients, the rhizosphere, all those things will work for you. And they will condition your soil. They will improve your soil. Use plant diversity to the fullest extent, where you have 5 of one plant together and then 5 of another plant, and they're all working together, and they're really creating this network of roots and connections that just make your soil so powerful. And the sun doesn't get to beat on it, and the wind doesn't carry away the soil, and the water doesn't carry away your topsoil. All those things, it's like use nature to your advantage. Nature is incredibly powerful. It is your best tool. The understanding of what roots do and how they keep soil in place and how they condition soil. Use that to your advantage. So when you're planning out your next garden, say to yourself, look, I'm not just going to plan on growing food. I'm going to have all these additional 5-year plan ideas and implementations that are going to make my garden move forward continuously. Let's face it, a simple garden can get very tired very quickly. A complicated, well-organized machine should never get tired. There should always be moisture in the ground, retain moisture. There should always be energy in your soils. If you can do all that, you can come up with a garden that is completely different to what you're used to as a brown thumb gardener. The green thumbers, they go to the next level with everything. They have great soil. They have a real understanding of where the sun is during the day. They have a real understanding that, you know, everything that is growing is creating more life. And if you can work towards a goal like that, where you're saying to yourself, I want a 5-year plan, I don't want a summer plan, one summer plan, then you'll have a much stronger garden, and you'll be very, very capable of producing huge amounts of produce. So try that out. Have multiple goals. Don't just work on one thing. Figure out how you can move your garden forward into a great 5-year plan, 5-year scenario where everything is thriving and humming along.